It's an honor to introduce Aaron Marcus. If this were a context in which I were giving some kind of bio note or profile, it would take me the full time of Aaron Marcus's presentation time simply to go through his accomplishments and his achievements. Since I'm not doing that, I will simply introduce him as the president of Aaron Marcus and Associates. He's here in Berkeley, California. I first knew about his work when I was a graduate student here, and he was already a fully accomplished professional working in areas that intersect between graphic design, semiotics, critical theory, cultural theory, cross-cultural theory, and other really interesting aspects of the intellectual life of the graphic designer. He's going to speak about key principles of visual semiotics, visible language, user interface, and user-centered design. Thanks.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay? How many of you consider yourselves researchers? How many of you can vote more than once? How many of you consider yourselves primarily teachers? How many of you consider yourselves artists? How many of you consider yourselves designers? And how many of you consider yourselves business people? We have a multidisciplinary audience. I was concerned in coming here that I might not have a presentation that would be interesting or appealing to people. I'll do what I can to keep you entertained. My own background, as pointed out, is in graphic design and visual communication. I originally studied physics and achieved escape velocity and went to art school, where for a while I thought I was in an insane asylum until I realized what the words meant that people were using, like, that works. Eventually I had the most fun I ever had in life for 3 years in graduate school at Yale. And the physics was at Princeton, and I went back to Princeton to teach in the School of Architecture and Urban Planning for 9 years before wandering around the earth and finally winding up in Berkeley in 1979. So I'm going to skip over the first 10 or 20 years of my professional work in which I did conceptual art, computer art, etc., and focus on the last 30 years, and particularly the last 5. When I started my company, we were trying to help people make smarter decisions faster, whatever technology or context. And we've been involved with what's called user-centered design or user-centered development of user interfaces and information visualization, now often called user experiences or interaction design. I thought of this as applied visual semiotics, applying the lexical, syntactic, semantic, and pragmatic techniques that I had studied myself or learned in graduate school, and trying to apply those to the metaphors, mental models, navigation, interaction, and appearance characteristics of what we had to communicate for our clients. I want to show you a few things from that. Along the way, I've tried to be a researcher, a teacher, academic person, and a designer. I've published a number of books and articles. We've worked for maybe 300 or 500 clients in 30 years. This is our basic philosophy of planning, research, and design. All those steps, creating personas and use scenarios, prototyping things, trying to help our clients make products and services that are usable, useful, and appealing. I hope these words will be somewhat familiar to you. And we've been involved all along with information design and visualization as well, trying to take data, transform it to knowledge, and then to information, and then to knowledge, which means action plans, and emphasizing charts, maps, and diagrams, using all the techniques of typography and color, etc. All this was good. It was exciting, it was challenging, it was interesting, but along the way, I came to realize that just showing information was good, but not enough. I'm trying to add to seeing and knowing, persuading, and doing as two other gerunds of interest. So we were trying to find ways to bring motivation to people through the applications or products and services that we were designing, and in part creating or using persuasion theory to lead to short-term and long-term behavior change. In this activity, we were influenced in the last 5 years by B.J. Fogg at Stanford, Robert Cialdini, Maslov, and others who have written about this topic. We know that social media are transforming our society and the kind of communication and collaboration that we can undertake. Multimedia is always involved, and the amount of reviews and opinions and the mix of entertainment with information that are taking place in products and services is sometimes overwhelming. Certainly it has changed dramatically in the past 30 years, let's say. We decided 5 years ago that mobile devices, phones, tablets, etc., even now smartwatches, were an effective platform in which we could carry out this research and design thinking. There are about 6 billion phones around the earth. They're always smarter, faster, cheaper. And we thought this would be a good way in which to experiment with our concepts. We have focused on several, in fact, about a dozen machines, as we call them, which try to persuade people to change their behavior. All of them have these 5 components: dashboards, a process model or a roadmap, where I came from and where I'm going, not only where I am now, which the dashboard shows, focused social networking, not just 5,000 of my Facebook friends, but in fact, who are the 5 or 10 people who care about me and my journey in this process. Focus, tips, and advice. Not everything I can find about on Google, but something that's specifically targeted to what I'm doing. And incentives, games, competitions, anything that keeps me motivated to keep on my journey. And what journeys are we talking about? We've developed concept prototypes for 12 machines. 11 machines. We started with 2009, the green machine, which I'm going to show you briefly. We've also developed a prototype application to increase people's attention to nutrition and exercise, the health machine, baby boomers to plan retirement, the money machine, to improve storytelling among generations from grandparents, children, grandchildren, the innovation machine to encourage innovation within corporations and organizations, the travel machine to turn leisure and business travelers into culture travelers, the learning machine to assume that a tablet is the future of all education. We might be here in this campus in the building, but chances are most people will be somewhere in the world communicating with a tablet. The happiness machine, which is to improve people's deep happiness through techniques of happiness theory. And finally, the marriage machine to improve bonding between people, not necessarily standard forms of marriage, but bonding. We've lectured about these, published them. A few of them have received awards. And we did succeed in convincing SAP, an enterprise software company, to take one of our projects, the Green Machine, further to develop internal software for enterprises or large corporations, large businesses that combine persuasion theory with sustainability. I'm going to show you briefly what we did for the Green Machine in the time that's available. Most of you who have looked at your electric meters in your house over the past 20 or 30 years, they were vaguely interesting, but I never checked mine more than once or twice per year, just out of curiosity. However, in the past few years, smart grids have allowed these little devices to gather information about your electrical use. Now that information becomes mass data collected by the utility company and shipped off everywhere if laws allowed it, mixed with entertainment, games, all kinds of other things. So there are some challenges to try to understand what can be learned from our electrical usage, how groups can participate in using that information developing the appropriate metaphors, metamodels, navigation, interaction, and appearance to help people understand what to do, and finding good discovery models for seeing patterns in that information. There are websites that have come into being like Spotfire and Lifelines to give people information about medical histories, to help scientists develop new products, new chemicals, et cetera. And this now is a challenge for everyone in terms of even interpreting their own home electrical use, or certainly for businesses. In terms of social media, there are lots of websites that have come into being to allow people to get together, to add information, and communicate that to other people on a volunteer basis. The government is trying to step in. You may know of Amber Alert to try to give citizens information about abducted children. There are social media collectors like Google and Flickr and others that gather videos, that gather photos, and try to feed back that information to people. Even the government and Microsoft have been involved with collecting this kind of information, helping people to make smarter decisions faster about their energy use. Google developed, at the time we started this work, a power meter technology that was a good step. But most of the products were not really focused on persuasion. I've been involved with interest in visualizing global energy use for 30 years. I was a research fellow in Honolulu back in 1978, and we published our audiovisual presentation that used images like this to try to use charts, maps, and diagrams to make people aware of the need for regional cooperation to change energy policies and to solve the world's problems in energy. We published information about it. We didn't change the world, but it takes a lot of effort to make that kind of change. Al Gore spent 20 years trying to convince people of need for energy change, global warming, attention to the environment, et cetera. So we realized that if we could embody persuasion techniques with this information, we might have more success. Research has shown that people can cut 10% of their energy use just by being shown information in a way that makes sense for them. Most of the products that were coming into being were for PCs, for personal computers, desktop computers at the time, and focused just on seeing the information, not a program of making change. We thought we should involve mobile devices, and that's how we came to our green machine, nice alliteration of sound, a nice repetition of sounds in that particular name, and we kept up this machine concept. We made this for mom and dad at home, trying to look at their energy use, checking to see how they're doing, perhaps a little competition with a neighbor or friend in energy usage. And these were the 5 steps of the process of behavior change, getting people to use it at all and to increase that frequency use, motivate them to change their consumption behavior, teaching them how to do more, and focusing on short-term and long-term behavior changes and eventually lifestyle changes. That's part of what is involved in all of these machines. And there are various techniques that can be involved, giving people awards or rewards, even focusing on user-centered design, which helps make it easier to use, easier to learn, more appealing. Some people are concerned about the impact of the future, the grandchildren and children, what will happen to our country and to the world in 100 years. Maslow's needs can be accounted for in terms of security, belonging to a group, et cetera. All of this can be incorporated into the functions in the data, which we try to do in this concept prototype. Certainly, competitions and challenges are useful for some people. That motivates them. Setting up goals, especially if you can set your own goals, is important to success. B.J. Fogg has talked about captology, things that will capture people and keep them moving along a path. Cialdini talks about weapons of influence. And all of these techniques are routinely used to motivate people to change. In fact, most of what we are dealing with here has been explored thoroughly in Jenny Craig, Weight Watchers, Alcoholics Anonymous, etc. But never before in Microsoft Word. That's the difference. Now, this is kind of interesting and exciting, but I do have to caution people, it's also something that you should be concerned about and aware of, because such techniques can be misused. They have been misused in propaganda efforts in the past. Witness the Leni Riefenstahl and the work of the Nazis in communicating the glories of the Aryan race and Nazi activities. They've been used to sell cigarettes, etc. So one has to think about this and to have presumed underneath an ethical basis for carrying out this activity. Unfortunately, most designers don't learn much about the ethics of design. Did you have this in your education? I think not. There is one source that I can point to, and that is the work of my wife, Leslie Becker, whose dissertation here at UC Berkeley is on the ethics of design. You can actually find it on Amazon if you want to pursue that topic. Many tips, social advice can help, social networking with friends can help. Feedback is extremely important in all of these machines, certainly this one. In particular, visual feedback to give you an idea of how am I doing in order to motivate you to change. If it's frequent, if it's combined with social commentary and interaction, all of that can help. From all of these techniques, we constructed an information architecture for the green machine, as we have for the 10 others. We were focusing only on household energy use, and here are a few of the key components of what would be embodied in the software. And here's what it might look like if you found the green machine on your iPhone or Android phone. We're showing it as an iPhone example, an old iPhone, because this is some years old, but it was intended for any portable device. We did do some evaluation. We have redesigned some of the screens. We have tried to think about cross-cultural issues in the design of any of these, because cultural expectations and preferences would influence quite a lot of what people would see, how they would interact, the metaphors used, not only the languages, but all the imagery, as the last presentation emphasized. Here are some of the screens that we finally came up with. Here is the green machine dashboard on the left, showing your current energy use in relation to your goals. The middle one shows a comparison with someone that you might have a little friendly competition with. The one on the right shows examples of a conjectural 100 years from now, when you're looking at how many life forms have died because of your energy use. How many more wars are there because of your energy use? As a motivation to change. Wouldn't work for all people, and we're not suggesting that it has to be for all people. Connecting with others who might feel, family and friends similar to you. Evaluating products according to multidimensional analysis in order to determine the best product or service to use based on their sustainability rating. These are the kinds of things that we explored in this particular project. We have published these over the past 5 years. I'm trying to complete a book now on all of the projects, which I hope to publish next year. And if there's time available, it looks like there is a little bit, and I wasn't sure how long this might take, I can show you some other of these machines. I want to acknowledge my associates, especially interns, who have helped us on this project over the years. Here are some of the interns. So that's the green machine. Here is the health machine. Same set of assumptions. Here's a dashboard that shows what you've had to eat today on the left. Calories, fat, protein, salt, all of the components that might influence you to think about your next snack or meal when you go out and ingest some more caffeine or sugar or carbohydrates. And on the right, maybe a comparison with someone you value or cherish, like Lady Gaga. It may not be Lady Gaga, but it might be someone else who takes care of her body, by the way, very, very well, much more so than poor Amy Winehouse. And through this modeling might lead one to make changes in what you eat, how much exercise you get. All of the data can be scanned in from restaurant menus and from packaging, so that you wouldn't really have to do that much work to incorporate the data about what you've had to eat today. And then you could look at this, at the cupcakes out and cookies out there, and know that you will have to do 20 more minutes on the treadmill, and that might influence you in what you choose to eat. We also invented a little pet animal that lives inside of the mobile device. Some people care more about their pets than about themselves and will take better care of them. So this little pet ages 7 times faster than you do, growing thick or thin. Challenges are provided every day or every week that you can carry out, and if you do well, then you get coupons for good foods at Safeway or some other store that would be nutritious and healthful, not junk food. The story machine was similar. It assumes that the mobile device that you have in your pocket or purse is a story machine for gathering stories from your friends, from your family, that it's always ready, that in fact, if you don't know how to do interviews, it would help you, that these could be stored and cataloged and contribute to not public information necessarily, you could decide to do that, but in fact to family lore, family education, family history, because so many of us live lives separated from our parents, from our children and grandchildren. In fact, when it's recording something, it's actually storing keywords as well that it hears in the information for you to select as tags by which to save all this, because if you had all of this video collected, it would be useless to you. You would never be able to find anything again unless you knew who was speaking, and it was about something about Uncle Jake. Let's search for that, and then you might be able to find it and enjoy it again. Family lineage, comparisons of life histories. When did your parents get married? When did they finish education? Comparing it to yourselves, to be able to see patterns in lives that normally are not so easily visualized. And even playing games like, who's that? Oh, I can't quite remember. That's actually my Aunt Eva, who will celebrate her 100th birthday in December, and she's on Facebook regularly. In the innovation machine, we are creating dashboards so that people within corporations and organizations could have a way to contribute ideas and to even advertise prototype ideas to gather together, somewhat like Kickstarter and meetups now do, to get together people who want to move some idea further forward inside of an organization, which normally is pretty protective of its people, plus it knows a lot about who's participating. And so it can actually help get people together much more easily than takes place in the outside world. And that's what we were trying to visualize in these screens. The driving machine proposed that you would have a tablet that would improve your sustainable driving habits and improve your safety of driving. You would just take your tablet with you at all times when you, if you still had a driver vehicle and not a driverless vehicle, and simply put the tablet in, and that was your dashboard. That is your dashboard to be carried with any vehicle that you would use. And it would have the key information available, plus techniques of enhancing your driving skills and paying attention to what's going on in the world. The learning machine proposed dashboards and course material, much like MOOCs and other online learning applications have now, but with additional persuasion techniques to encourage good behavior. I don't have, I think, the time to go on to the happiness machine, but we have maybe some extra time for any questions. What I've tried to review is this focused set of 11 projects over the past 5 years that have tried to combine information design with persuasion design to be able to use metaphors, mental models, navigation, interaction, and appearance in order to change people's behavior. I haven't, as I said, emphasized earlier work in conceptual art and computer art, but if you're interested in seeing any of that, if you give me your email address, I promise to send you electronically 2 monographs on my work in the 1960s and 70s in that area. And I can even show you where to get a free downloadable book on user experience in science fiction movies and TV over the last 100 years, if that's of interest to you, plus some other information in this direction. In the meantime, thank you for your attention. Four minutes to go. Okay.
Hi there, Aaron. Enjoyed your talk, and actually, I once talked with you when I was starting a software company about user interface. So it's nice to see you again.
Which company
I once
again?
talked to you about doing some user interface work for my firm. I didn't do that, but it's nice to see you again.
Thank you, and I don't hold it against you.
Thank you. I'm really interested in the health machine. It's not quite productized, but what if I wanted to kind of have it or use it or develop it, what would I do with it?
How would you get something from us, you mean? Or what would you do if you were taking it further?
How would I get that functionality for my life?
Well, for all of these machines, what we have done is to create paper prototypes, so to speak, or sometimes slightly interactive prototypes. They are not database supported. Frankly, we just haven't had the time or the people power. We have devoted about 3 months of full-time effort of several people to the creation of what we have so far, and I forgot to make it clear, we share that with anyone. We have published it, it's open intellectual property. We're not trying to protect it. So any group, as I've been trying to persuade Kaiser for several years, could take that further. Now with Apple bringing out in about 2 days, it's iWatch and iPhone 6 with health orientation, it seems the perfect time for someone to take the health machine further. And what you would have to do is spend another 3 weeks to 3 months reconceptualizing for the particular target market, the particular platform, and finding some coders inside your company or somewhere in India or South Vietnam or somewhere, the Philippines, to code this into being. The coding can be done, but the design of the application and its user interface and information visualization is something that can't be done so quickly, so easily. And that's work that remains to be done. That's why we give this away and try to hope that someone will take us along on that next phase of the journey. We tried to get a grant from the US government to redo the Green Machine for all California high school students. It would have been a great project, but we lost out at the last minute because of some minor mathematical error in our addition of funds. And it was really quite minor considering the amount of money we were asking for. So that never took place. But had it taken place, we might have been able then to redesign that for California teenagers, which would have been reinventing all of the imagery, the information structure, et cetera. So all of these can be, so to speak, easily taken further now that you have this basis of information. And we even have extensive white papers and other material related to all of the research that we've done that, as we did with SAP, we're willing to give away and share in order to see these things move forward because we believe in them. We believe that they would be helpful. Hope that helps answer.
Yeah, I'm curious. It sounds like you're open source, is that correct?
Well, it's not correct to say it's open source because there's no code.
Well, but I meant this, what you're doing.
It's open intellectual property, open IP.
How do you make money?
We don't.
What's your model?
We don't. Not from these. We hope to get projects like with SAP to take it further. We've done these as sort of do-good activities of my company over the past 5 years. And it's worth about approximately $250,000 of time if anyone had taken the trouble to do that for each one of them. And we give it away. I learned long ago that you have to give away to get back in life and in business.
So you've answered a number of my questions, which had to do with the difference between the machine and the avatar. You showed the dog. If there was an API, which there isn't because there's no code. And so I have a number of questions about the ecology of persuasion. So certainly the first question would be behavior. You know, the environment changes over time, thus behavior changes over time. We haven't had these behavioral frameworks, or persuasion frameworks, so long to kind of accept the need for behavior change over time. The second question would be, as a software developer, and certainly the VC culture, the software development culture, you know, goes for do ugly early, go fast with the least. Could you comment on the difference between, you know, this top-down grand schematic design that you've done and sort of the getting it out there and learning from the interaction?
Two good points. Let's see. First of all, and how much time do we have? 0? Oh. First thing is, yes, behavior does change. Behavior techniques change. But gosh, as we saw in this previous wonderful presentation, this very sexy presentation, a lot of these issues have been around for 1,000 years or more. You know, Michelangelo has created in the Sistine Chapel one heck of a comic book to persuade people and to focus, as another earlier presentation emphasized, the experience of people as well as the content portrayed according to canon law, etc. So while some aspects do change, and society certainly changes, and cultures are different, there are some techniques, there are some patterns, there is some wisdom that we can easily inherit from the past. And in the more recent, let's say 50 years, a century, many of the, pardon me for saying it, many of the addiction programs, like Weight Watchers and Alcoholics Anonymous, have had some success in dealing with our addictions. And there are some fundamental issues that make one nervous about becoming dependent on this device instead of myself or anyone else in changing my behavior. So these issues, or the community, yes. So there are many issues to be explored. We haven't tried to solve all this. We are just opening the door, and we're not the only ones. In terms of, oh yes, in terms of 3-week product development, you know, I'm a guest critic at UC Berkeley's computer science department, sometimes at the iSchool, at Haas, and at California College of Arts for the latest student things. And I know that the computer science students can hack out in three weeks, certainly 12 weeks, a working application. and get it out and see what happens. And I know that that's a VC culture canon. But I don't think that that necessarily leads to the best user experience design. I'm kind of an old world fuddy-duddy from that point of view. So what we've tried to do is to prime the pump by giving a longer-term, 3-month investigation of some of the research issues, some of the subject matter issues, as well as persuasion design philosophy and information design philosophy that can help people who are going to start off on their 12-week first commercial version, which would have to be targeted, with very strict limits to the kind of people, the age group, the demographics, the platform, the operating system, et cetera, that's going to be emphasized. And in that rush, I think it's helpful to have some of this background information.
Yeah, Aaron, interesting presentation. And one of the things that strikes me is that it's a very reasoned and rational presentation about emotional experience. And so I want to sort of bring us back to, in a way, make a connection between what Lena was talking about and some of what you're talking about, because the affective strength of the images that Lena is looking at, and I think the force of her argument about the ways in which the metaphor becomes an enacting agent, is so strong. And so one of the things I'm being very specific in my question is that I think about little Fido on the screen. And then I think about the grids and the graphs and so forth. And I'm just wondering if I were to ask you to pinpoint, in a sense, what the graphical means of persuasion are in aesthetic terms. What might that inventory look like?
A very interesting and perceptive question. Certainly, the introduction of Fido, by the way, emotion design in the tech world is certainly in the past, since Peter Desmet in 2002, has been a hot topic, and even earlier. And the selection of particular images like little Fido and other appealing things, even like a juicy apple, are items that are pleasant and appealing and build upon positive emotion experience. The interesting thing was when we showed people pictures of the dismal newspaper of the future with disasters looming, we thought, oh, they'll probably hate that, but they didn't. Some people love to see bad news. And so it was something which captured them in B.J. Fogg's philosophy and kept them interested, motivated, at least partially fixated on the subject matter and the application. It's also the case, as I pointed out, that, well, all of the designs that I've shown you are neat and clean designs that reflect my particular design style, although I've done cartoons and crazy other stuff, but are the things that I think help provide a neutral context in which to be looking at things which are emotionally possibly quite disturbing or challenging, like famine or my weight or some other topic. And for other people and other cultures, all of what I showed you would be so colossally boring and uninteresting that it would never, they would not look at it for more than 2/3 of a second before dismissing it. If I were to show this in India and some places in China or other places, they expect other ways of showing things that are emotionally attractive, regardless of the subject matter. In fact, I can't remember the particular citation, but when Dungeons and Dragons was introduced into Japan in the Audis, maybe? I can't remember the date. But they had to prettify the monsters. They were too ugly. Even the evildoers had to be just a little more attractive. And then sales took off. Yes.
I have one question for you. As you know, my field of research is really creativity research. And one of the really interesting things I came across is, or rather, one of the traits that makes creative people creative is neophilia. Their
Yes.
love of novelty, their openness to new experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really, really surprised when I was reading the literature that there are a tremendous amount of people who are just utterly immune to novel stimuli. And I thought this was possibly just like my prejudice because, you know, I went to Berkeley and Yale, and obviously people, you know, come to these schools, they're obviously inherently neophile and curious and interested in new things, and I was really shocked to read these experiments where, you know, people were presented with options, whether they'd want to choose what they knew or whether they'd want to go on a little adventure, and the amount of people who would continually want to opt for what they knew again and again and again, I just found absolutely mind-boggling.
This is
and I just wondered to what extent this has, whether you can see any implication for this in your work, because all of us, I mean, I would, you know, generally say are sort of neophiles, and we forget that that is not necessarily the. You know, the state is for everybody.
You have
and
raised,
that not everybody's pleasure center is stimulated by novelty.
You have raised a very deep and fundamental issue which we don't have time to explore. But I refer you to, say, the review of the new book on curiosity in the New York Times, I think, in the last 3 days. People moaning and groaning about people being, with their iPhones, just attuned to a constant surface new and not really wanting to explore anything deep. Or people I know who teach, they're concerned about the fact that students seem less curious these days. And with all of the assault of the new, we may be too busy reviewing surface newness to have any time, any energy left to explore something deeper, and that's dangerous. So without coming down hard on novelty versus deeper exploration, it's like hedonism versus eudaimonia, surface happiness and deeper happiness. We would have to explore that further. We have certainly tried to incorporate in many of our machine projects novelty pop-up surprises to keep people interested. At the same time, we have an industrial strength task at hand, which is to get people to change their behavior. And there are a complex set of ways that needs to be done. And it needs to be tuned for the individual user, that person's psychology, their needs, expectations, preferences,
I must
etc.
say, at least I've managed to become a much better son. I no longer think that my mother just needs waking up to the wonders of life. I just let her.
Let's thank our speaker.
Thank you.